Good morning, evening, afternoon. I'm tatocat. Welcome to my channel. Today we are playing Echoes, a Lucid9 fan game. Previously, after the three corporations were talking, there's like some sort of attack and they're gonna tenure Rui and send her out into the world doing some stuffs. And Rui's just talking about her daily routine of drinking a bunch of cheap bourbon and throwing up so she can feel something, and how her old self wouldn't listen to her and things like that. And that is where we left off. She clinged to each of her prejudices. She refused to abandon her misguided notion that life was somehow a gift. If I stood in front of her now, I could beat her until she couldn't stand, and yet she'd still think that everything could be protected, that every dream could be safeguarded, every bright future guaranteed through hope and undying dedication. Oh, did it say something this time? No, okay. Lies. Festering, corpulent lies. Each and every one of them. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that word. But just as a weapon is nothing without someone to wield it, a lie is nothing without someone to lend it credence, or credence, if you will. I realize that now. However, I also realize that having something to believe in means having something to care about. And for most, having something to care about means having something to live for. Even if that something isn't a lie. Even if that something is a lie. So why not just let them believe? After all, I can't sell a better life to someone with no will to live. Hell, even if I have something to live for. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. After a brief shower, I take it upon myself to glance down at my phone once more, just for caution's sake. That's my sound for the phone turning on. April 25th, 8:45, 2041. 8:45 a.m. Before my decision, I wouldn't have chosen to wake up so late. But orders are orders. Besides, if those extra hours of sleep were a personal request, I'd rather not have Kosuke worrying about me on the job. For the past 3 years, this hospital room has been my home. Okay, so she is living in a hospital room. Got it. Or at least as close to a home as I could ever find for myself. It's not as though I was impatient here. At least, not in any official capacity. Early on, Kosuke was kind enough to offer me a rent-free 1,500 square foot apartment in the district, but I declined. I'd be better off turning it down. Not in any act of charity, though. It was much more like an act of complete indifference, which in retrospect might explain the puzzled look I got from him. The old me would have felt guilty about living in a 7th floor designer condominium while people were freezing to death on the sidewalk outside. The new me is just too impatient for the commute. That, and I've always liked being as close to the action as possible. It was like that for me while I was speedrunning my medical training, and it was also like that for me for the past 6 months, during which I found myself working overtime nearly every day. I've never had too many bills to pay, but the alternative to taking on extra hours was being alone with my own thoughts. We all know how fun that is. Kosuke was kind enough to let me rent out this hospital room. And if I'm being honest, it's a far better deal than I ever could have bargained for myself. Both trouble and opportunity were but a short walk away. Sorry, excuse me. Both trouble and opportunity were but a short walk away. Today, however, I suppose it's time to leave this place behind. I'm tempted to press the call button. My thumb has been hovering over for the past minute, but ultimately decide against it. Talking can wait. Right now, I need to make sure the few things I'm bringing with me are accounted for. Wheeling a small black suitcase in tow, I take the opportunity to shut the blinds on my way to the bathroom. The security cameras were removed, so privacy shouldn't be a concern. Just feels wrong to have the sun staring me in the face so early after I've woken up. Once the doors locked behind me, I proceed to leaf through the contents of my bag. Pillow, laptop, various hygiene products, not to mention a few 100 ounces of cheap swill. I already have my key, ring, and phone in the side pockets of my coat, so everything should be here. Well, what was that thud for? As I attempt to pull it out, my arm strikes something metallic. From the sound it makes, I half expected the pain to be noticeable, but the tingling sensation, now spreading across my body, seems to cancel most of it out. A familiar case with a smooth steel finish, about a foot in length, 8 inches in width, and 4 inches in depth. I set it down on the dimly lit floor in front of me, doing what I can to steady my breathing as I reach towards the keypad on its handle. 4895634. Not the most creative code, but I doubt I could have remembered anything else. As for what's inside, though, I doubt I'll ever get used to looking at the damn thing. At the moment, it's a little more than a frame of dull silver, cold to the touch, and pristine in its structure, with the exception of a few scratches. Its form-fitting grip and safety lever are more than telling of its singular purpose, yet it helps to think of it more as a generalist tool, predisposed to functioning only as intended. Yet, by that logic, the only component that's out of place is me. I can almost feel the concussive force impacting me again as my index finger comes to rest on the trigger guard. For a split second, I contemplate turning the barrel against myself, but my memories convince me otherwise. Memories of the smell of old blood, so thick in the air that I could taste it. Memories of crimson machinery smears against the walls as 2 rounds made their mark. And yet, in the back of my mind, question mark, question mark, question mark, dot, 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 dot. Hey. Don't worry about me, okay? Who is this? Worry about dragging a brush through your hair. You look like a 5th grader's science fair project on static electricity. Thank you, though, for staying, for everything. As long as you're here. I don't even care if we have to stay here forever. Was that Yama? So I did his voice completely wrong. I feel the presence of something comforting, of course. I used to do this on the weekends when my parents were too busy at their clinic to look after me at home. Back then, I wasn't old enough to help them out at work and simultaneously too old to be eligible for any daycare services that might have been offered to our family on the weekends. I didn't really have the option to go over to a friend's house either. Talking about Shinto mythology instead of playing with dolls wasn't really a recipe for popularity with the other girls. And at that time, I still thought boys were super gross. generally speaking. The other kids just seemed to avoid me, so the one option left for me while I was between the ages of 5 and 7 was to hang out in an empty house. Boredom wasn't really an issue. After all, it's almost impossible to be bored when you have access to an ET Super 64 and a bountiful supply of chocolate covered corn puffs, or a really comfy couch. One that probably doesn't exist anymore, but that doesn't change how comfy it was. It's the same reason that whenever I remember my parents, I remember them at their best. As much as I hated being alone, I never held it against them. If I knew how many brain tumors they had to remove or how much effort it took to repair a damaged spinal cord without the aid of corporate god tech, I wouldn't have asked them to spend more time with me. The problem was, I was always too anxious to enjoy the time I spent on my own. Every night they came home late, I was worried that they weren't going to come home at all. I was worried that everyone was going to hate me when I grew up because I didn't play with their toys, and nobody was going to be my friend because I got scared whenever I had to talk to someone new. I couldn't run as fast or jump as high as the other kids. They laughed at me for tripping and falling over, but the adults encouraged me to keep trying so I could get better at it someday. I barely passed the test I took, not because I never studied, but because I always had to rush to complete them. My teachers encouraged me to keep trying so I could get better at it someday. Despite being labeled as gifted and receiving constant encouragement from the people around me, I still never got any better. Everyone seemed to disagree, but deep down I knew I was never going to be good enough for anyone, so I worried about that too. I must hide my anxiety well. I must have hidden my anxiety well back then, because nobody ever sent me to a therapist or a counselor. The only real advice I ever got was from my dad, who suggested that I try to think happy thoughts about happy things whenever I was alone. When he jokingly suggested that I think about some bullshit like candy or sunshine, we had a good laugh. And for the rest of my life, it became one of the many memories I tried to visualize whenever I needed a distraction. At some point, drawing on the good times must have become a subconscious defense mechanism for me. In those times, we didn't live in a big city or grovel at the feet of the mega corporation to which we sold our souls. We didn't need to escape destitution. All we needed to do was to serve the community as a family in a nice town 3 hours out. And once I befriended the one boy who didn't mind talking to me, and the adventurous girl who saw the good in everyone, those times would form the basis for the few positive memories I have left today. I can remember things that made me laugh or smile as a little girl, like when my mom let me stay up late enough to see my dad come home. It was almost a Friday tradition for me to run straight into his arms as soon as he opened the door, and then get gobbled up in one of those I love my daughter more than I love not having back pain hugs. For some reason, I always requested a passage from the Kojiki whenever he offered to read me a bedtime story. Looking back, though, it was probably because I was so sick of all the girls in my after-school group talking about ponies and princesses and other pink shit marketed to them by the multi-national cables of Big Toy. Cabals of Big Toy. There we go. As for my mom, she was almost always cooking dinner by the time I got home. We never really had much time to talk, but she used to make the best miso soup. They say that if it looks and smells like miso, it isn't the best miso. I didn't need the best miso as a kid, though. The funny animal shapes my mom cut the tofu into were good enough for me. I remember when there was a tofu elephant, a tofu frog, a tofu horse, a tofu blowfish, a tofu spider crab, and my favorite of all, the giant tofu salamander. Oh no, it's one of the ones that go all the way down here. And you can't read that when that happens. It doesn't scroll. I remember when I fell asleep, lying on the grass with my two best friends, my two only friends. I remember those times. I remember them because I can't go back. No one can. But just like a black hole holds onto mass in a cold, dark universe, I'll hold on to those memories for as long as they'll have me. They'll be the last thing I lose. Until then, however, I'll walk down this road. This invisible road. This road that winds and turns as it leads through a storm of confusion to nothing and no one. But we all walk down similar roads. Roads that will someday meet. In this life, I know that there's no need for me to take control. It's already worth living, at least to me. in my body, my mind, my memories, my implants. They all grant me the strength to go on. When that strength no longer exists, it may be time for me to do the same. But when that time comes, I won't need to welcome death, because I know deep down, for each and every one of us, the suicide has already begun. And this time, it's unpreventable. As I return my weapon to the case, its remaining contents seem to call me to them. Mere inches away from a small box of ammunition, is an object far more benign in its intended purpose. It was supposed to be a gift. Beneath its cobalt and silver skeleton, it was supposed to stand as a testament to mutual sacrifice. After all these years, this pen is still intact, yet what purpose does it hold now? To bleed its ink while dry, scrawling some empty message that only the doomed would bother to read? Oh. Does this game have a gallery? I didn't see one on the menu page, but sometimes galleries don't show up until like after you've completed some type of ending, either any ending or a good ending. An old photograph comes into view as I extract the magazine from my handgun. It's been far too long for it to cause me to shed even a single tear. Yet, as faded as it might be, it still remains to be found. Even after all this time, the significance is still there. I might not always see it, though. Nobody ever said I was perfect. If anything, a world away from perfection ever since my life began. Maybe that's why I'm still struggling to live with some of the shit I've done. Even now, I feel like an intruder in my own memories. Like I'm going into someone else's house, knocking over their bookshelves and flipping through their photo album. The places captured on paper, the faces inside, even if they once belonged to me, I'd have to forget about them all by the end of my life. The struggle against oblivion is never over. Try as we might, it's one we're bound to lose. However, didn't we engineer both concepts ourselves? Yama might know. I didn't want to believe some of the things he said back then. Well, we'll see. We'll hear the things that Yama believed in back then in the next episode, and see like Rui has to go shoot somebody. I assume she does have to take someone out. Yeah. Hope to see you next time.